Russia's industrial heart just flatlined, and the Kremlin is hiding the body. Right now, at this very moment, something catastrophic is unfolding across Russia's factory floors. And the numbers leaking out of Moscow, they're terrifying the defense analysts who've been tracking this. This isn't a temporary slowdown. It's the systematic disintegration of an industrial empire that took 70 years to construct. Here's what nobody saw coming. The collapse isn't scheduled for 2026 or 2027. It's happening right now, this week, today. The factories are dying, and when they're gone, they're not coming back. What happens when a military superpower loses the ability to build weapons? We're about to find out. But first, let's expose the labor crisis that's strangling every single sector. Russian factories are operating far below capacity, and the workforce shortage has hit crisis levels. The manufacturing sector has reduced by nearly 2 million workers, a gap so massive that no amount of recruitment drivers or salary hikes can fill it. The problem isn't just the numbers, it's skill. The experienced engineers who knew how to keep Soviet-era equipment running are gone. Some fled the country when mobilization started. Others got drafted and never came back from Ukraine. Here's what nobody talks about. When a factory loses its skilled workforce, you can't just replace them overnight. Training new workers on complex machinery takes years, not months. And Russia doesn't even have years. Every day that passes, more institutional knowledge walks out the door or gets buried in Ukrainian or worse, Western soil. The labor crisis hits everywhere. Precision engineering plants that make components for missiles can't find toolmakers. Tank factories in the Urals run single shifts instead of 3 because there's nobody to man the night crews. Even basic manufacturing, the stuff that keeps everyday Russia functioning, is falling apart. With the defense sector no longer holding the line but slipping into decline, the next blow strikes at the very backbone of Russia's heavy industry. But hold on for a second. If you think this is temporary, why don't you stick around, because the data shows this is only getting worse. Before we dig deeper, please do hit that like button and drop a comment, letting me know what shocks you the most about Russia's crisis. Don't forget to subscribe because we're tracking how fast this is deteriorating. Let's talk about steel as Russia's industrial backbone collapses. Steel is the blood of any industrial economy. You need it for tanks, ships, for buildings, for literally everything that makes a modern nation function. And Russia's steel industry is hemorrhaging. Russia's metallurgical industry slipped into recession for the first time since 2022, with output down over 3%. These aren't temporary dips. Those are structural fractures. The giants of Russian metallurgy are bleeding cash. Major steel producers have seen profits collapse, with some ending recent periods with net losses or negative cash flow. These companies supply the steel that goes into armored vehicles, artillery systems, and missile components. When their production lines slow down, Russia's entire military supply chain chokes. The real killer? Russia lost its Western export markets permanently, and high interest rates combined with currency instability have made the remaining exports, unprofitable. Industry leaders warn that companies may struggle to sell millions of tons of steel this year. And when you can't sell your product, you shut down blast furnaces. Once those furnaces go cold, restoring them costs a fortune and takes months. Nearly 700,000 people work in Russia's metallurgical industry, and they're watching their employers cut shifts, slash wages, and prepare for mass layoffs. If metallurgy collapses, it drags a massive chunk of Russia's industrial engine with it. And if that sounds bad, the real story starts when you trace the collapse through the freight networks now grinding to a halt. Here's a number that should terrify Moscow. Rail freight has collapsed significantly since 2025, showing one of the worst performances in over 2 decades. Now I want you to picture this for a second. Hundreds of thousands of empty rail cars sitting idle across the country. Rail freight is the ultimate economic indicator because it doesn't lie. Politicians can massage GDP figures and forge inflation statistics, but you can't fake cargo movement. When transits sit empty, it means factories aren't producing, mines aren't extracting, and consumers aren't buying. If current trends continue, freight volumes could hit their lowest levels since the early 2000s, erasing more than 2 decades of growth. Even container shipments, which had grown steadily despite everything, have declined. The drop hits domestic transport even harder than exports, meaning Russia's internal economy is contracting fast. What's actually being moved reveals another ugly truth. More and more of Russia's, rail capacity goes to military shipments, like ammunition, equipment, troops. All of it clogs the system while civilian goods are, sitting and waiting. That means longer delays for regular businesses and higher costs, as well as economic damage that compounds every month. Railway data exposes what Kremlin statistics try to hide. And if empty railcars are worrying, the next revelation is even far worse than that. You'd think military factories would be immune to all this, right? After all, the Kremlin throws unlimited money at defense production. But even the war machine is running on fumes. Production of fabricated metal products, which surged over 26% in 2023 and over 31% in 2024, dropped significantly year on year in recent months. Output of their transport equipment and category that include tanks and armored vehicles slowed sharply to just 6% growth after previously posting over 61% growth. This represents a complete reversal from recent years, when the industry posted massive profits. How does an industry with guaranteed government contracts and unlimited priority access to resources suddenly start struggling? Well, the answer is simple. Costs are rising faster than the money coming in. Manufacturing output rose just 0.4% year on year in September, 8 times slower than in August, marking the weakest growth since early 2023. The problem isn't demand. Moscow will buy every tank and artillery shell they can produce. The problem is, they literally cannot produce enough because the fundamentals have broken down. Defense-related industries are already operating near full capacity. You can't squeeze much more output from factories already running maximum shifts. And when you push equipment that hard without proper maintenance or replacement parts, things break. The reliance on Beijing's supply chains carried a hidden risk, and the next blow will land on the very factories Russia depends on to build its arsenal. Russia's central bank is holding interest rates at a crushing level to fight inflation, rates that would bankrupt most Western economies overnight. For context, when interest rates in the United States hit 4%, people talk about economic hardship. Russia is dealing with rates far higher, and businesses are drowning. The central bank's forecast sees the key rate averaging about 19% this year, with inflation running at 9%. Here's how the death spiral works. Companies need workers, so they raise wages. Higher wages drive up inflation. Central bank jacks up interest rates to control inflation. Higher rates mean businesses can borrow to invest or expand. So they cut production, lay off workers, or shut down entirely. This does push more people out of work, which should lower wage pressure. Except the thing is that Russia has such a severe labor shortage that wages keep climbing anyway. The government keeps spending like there's no tomorrow because, there might not be, actually. The federal deficit has grown 5 times larger than projected, forcing potential spending cuts that could trigger an economic cooldown. By late 2024, Russia's rainy day fund stood at historically low levels. That's the reserve that's supposed to cushion economic shocks and last for decades. At the current burn rate, it could be exhausted within, just a few years. What Moscow doesn't admit is that every bond bought and every ruble printed add fuel to the fire, and, the next blow will leave no part of the economy untouched. Russia's economy expanded by just 1% in the first 9 months of 2025, which is 4 times slower than the 4.3% growth recorded a year earlier. Industrial growth rose just 0.5% compared to 5.6% in 2024, while most civilian sectors are now in decline. But those official numbers hide how bad things really are. Food production fell, textile and footwear output dropped over 2%, and furniture manufacturing plunged nearly 10%. Oil refining contracted by 3% after a series of Ukrainian drone attacks. Mining output, including oil, gas, and coal production, fell by more than 2.4% year-on-year in the first half of 2025. The pattern is clear. Russia's war economy delivered short-term growth by throwing money at defense production, but that model is unsustainable. Economists note that production capacity and labor reserves are now exhausted. Some analysts estimate Russia's GDP shrank between January and August when properly measured. The core problem runs deeper than numbers on a spreadsheet. Russia has lost major export markets, faces rising costs from sanction evasions, and suffers from weak labor policies that compound its structural challenges. Meanwhile, the military-industrial complex remains unprofitable, with little spillover into civilian productivity. Some analysts see signs of near collapse, while others note Russia could stumble along for years in managed decline. Beneath the surface, every indicator is tipping in one direction, and what comes next could redefine the limits of Russia's economic endurance. There is one piece of the puzzle that almost never makes headlines, but it might be the most devastating of all. Russia needs to find millions of workers over the next 5 years just to replace people reaching retirement age. By 2030, Russia needs to bring nearly 11 million people into the economy, accounting for retirements and new job creation. That's before accounting for war casualties, emigration, or the million-plus men pulled out of the workforce to fight in Ukraine. Russian companies ended 2024 short of over 2.6 million employees, a record high, and these aren't jobs for anyone with a pulse. The most in-demand workers are skilled tradespeople, mechanics, vehicle repair technicians, electricians, toolmakers, construction workers. Russia's working age population is shrinking. Birth rates have been below replacement level for decades, and the war accelerated the demographic collapse. Russia has sustained massive casualties since the start of the war, including both dead and injured. Those aren't just soldiers, they're workers, taxpayers, future parents who will never have children. The Kremlin knows this is existential. You can't run an industrial economy without workers. You can't maintain a modern nation without young people. Russia is running out of all three simultaneously, and there is no policy fix that solves a demographic crisis in under 20 years. This factor ensures that even if Russia survives the war, even if sanctions ease, even if oil prices rebound, the long-term trajectory remains catastrophic. You cannot rebuild an industrial base without people, and Russia's people are disappearing. Russia's industrial collapse isn't a prediction anymore. It's a reality unfolding in real time. Steel production crashing, rail freight cratering, defense industries stalling, and a labor shortage so severe it threatens every sector simultaneously. The Kremlin can spin all the propaganda it wants, but empty factories tell all the truth that we need to see. This isn't about whether Russia's economy will crack. It's about how much longer it can hold together before something fundamental breaks. The industrial foundation that powered the Soviet is crumbling, and every data point confirms the collapse is moving faster than anyone predicted. If this deep dive into Russia's real-time economic collapse shocked you, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling us which breaking point you think will trigger the final crisis, and subscribe, because next we're exposing more economic time bombs.